Hi, and welcome to Juice Pouch Players. Today, I'll be explaining the rules of the game Solar Gardens. So, Solar Gardens falls into the category of games I played at Gen Con, but didn't buy. I don't think I mentioned it, but I was on a game buying ban at last year's Gen Con, so while there were plenty of games that I played and loved, like Solar Gardens, I didn't end up buying a majority of them. By the end of the weekend, I'd ended up getting a couple. I caved very quickly. I held out for a solid 2.5 days, but caved very quickly after that. All of this to say, Solar Garden has been on my list to buy for months, and I'm so glad I did. I waited until the Critical Role annual sale to finally get my own copy of this game, and I have been introducing every small board game group that I can to this game. Since there is a limit of only 5 players for this game, it is a little bit harder to make sure that you have the right amount of people for this, because my board game nights tend to be a little bit bigger than that, but every chance I get, I am bringing out this game. The goal of Solar Gardens is to build the best carbon-neutral green space, as the garden planner working on the roof of a skyscraper. This is based on whose garden has garnered the most points by the end of the game. Now, you're probably asking, how do you get these points? How is that totaled up? There are lots of ways to get points in this game, so let's head over to game cards and components. For this game, you will be primarily dealing with a series of cardboard pieces that will make up your garden. These contain a variety of different garden features, which are the main component of how you score in this game. The types of garden features are animal habitats, solar panels, wind turbines, flower beds and their water filters, paths, and sculptures. On to animal habitats. This is by far the most complicated when it comes to scoring. There are 2 ways of scoring with animal habitats. First, there are 5 different types of animal habitats. They all look a little different, but they're very cute on the board. Having a complete set of all 5 of these anywhere on the board is 5 points. The other way to score is by placing the same animal habitat in orthogonal places on your board. Whether it's 2 vertical pieces or 2 horizontal pieces, orthogonal. So if you have 3 tiles and say they form a little L, each has their own little animal habitat and they're all the same animal habitat. The way that this works is these animal habitats are scored in pairs. So 2 orthogonal habitats are 3 points each. So in an L situation, the top one and the middle one is a set of 3 points, and the middle one and the side one is another set of 3 points. So collectively, you would score 6 points for a set of 3 orthogonal animal habitats. Orthogonal means that you do not score any that are diagonal, though. It's just vertical, horizontal. Solar panels. On each of the top column, you'll see 4 sun equals some number. This means getting 4 or more solar panels in this column will give you that number of points. The columns vary from 1 to 4 points, so it is better to prioritize getting as many solar panels as possible in the column that is worth 4 points. Wind turbines. Wind turbines work the same way as solar panels, except it's on rows instead of columns. So there will be something along the line of that says 4 wind equals some number of points. That means 4 or more wind turbines in that row equals whatever number of points that is. Once again, prioritizing getting wind turbines in the row worth 4 points is definitely more beneficial than prioritizing getting 4 wind turbines in the row worth 1 point. Flower beds and water filters. Flower beds and water filters are my personal favorite part of building these gardens. Do they get you the most points? In my experience, no, I tend to lose this game, but I really, really love these flower beds and water filters. There are 2 things you need in order to score any points off of a flower bed and water filter set. Flower beds appear in a variety of shapes, and they have these little rows sectioned off, but like any good flower garden, you do need fencing to keep all your flowers in the field very safe. This means that you cannot leave a garden open on any side. You need to have fencing on all sides. Now, the edge of the board does count as a fence. So that makes some things easy, especially if you try to coordinate getting your flower gardens towards the edge of the board. The second thing you need is a water filter. If you close off and fence in your flower garden on all sides, but you do not have any source of water in your garden, you get no points for that garden at all, which really sucks. Because sometimes you have no choice. But some of the gardens will come with water filters in them. It is important to make sure that you fence those off or attach them to your other gardens to get as many points as possible. Now, The way that flower gardens score points is for each tile that has a flower garden that is then fenced in and has a source of water somewhere in that garden, it doesn't have to be on that same tile, you get 1 point per space. But if you have a flower garden that you've managed to get 2 water filters in, you get 2 points per space. 3 water filters, still 2 points per space. So after getting 2 water filters in, there isn't a continuous skyrocketing of points per space of flower garden, but getting 2 water filters is kind of ideal. Paths. Paths are depicted by brown dirt paths with lights on the edge of them on each of the tiles. You only score points for your longest path. Longest path is the one that incorporates the most pieces on your board. So this means that it can twist and turn to your heart's content. It could have little offshoots as long as it is continuous. You get 1 point for each tile the longest path covers. Player with the longest path gets 3 extra points. Ties result in both players getting those 3 extra points. All other paths do not score, just your longest one. Finally, sculptures. Each sculpture is 1 point. Some sculptures come in groups of 2 or 3. Those are worth 1 point for each sculpture depicted. So it is each sculpture depicted on the tile is worth 1 point. To play the base game, you will need player boards, the player aid boards, starting player token, all the tiles shuffled and flipped over so they are facing down, and the score pad for the end of the game. I like to stack my tiles into even piles, or as even as I can get them. They don't have to be placed in any particular order. They should actually be shuffled to the best of your ability, as long as they are played face down. Now, one of the boards has a starting player indicator on the back of it. This is the player that starts the game with the starting player token. Each round, the starting player will grab a number of tiles equal to the number of players plus 1. So in a game with 2 players, you grab 3 tiles per round. Keep these face down, and the starting player will flip over the top one and look at it. The starting player then chooses if they would like to play this tile on their board. When you play a tile, you must choose a specific place on your board that you are playing it, and once you place it in that spot, you cannot move it to a different spot on your board. Then you pass the remaining pieces to the next person. If you look at this first tile and you decide you don't want it, you are allowed to pass it to the next player in rotation. They can look at it and decide whether or not they want to keep it or pass it along. You must play 1 tile per round, which means that you can continue to pass as many pieces as you like. But once you receive the last tile in a set, you have to play it. So it's good to be picky, but you don't want to be too picky, because sometimes you might get stuck with something worse. Once everyone has played their tiles, the starting player token passes to the left, and the next player grabs their set of tiles. This means that the last person in each rotation will only see 2 of the tiles, maximum. If they choose to pass in the first tile they see, whatever the next tile is the last one in the set, and they must take the second tile. The starting player has the most options, but if you pass too many times, you once again may be left with very slim pickings. I have found that I think this will be a very talkative board game, but it is consistently one of the quietest board games I've ever played, because everyone is so focused in on their specific board, because when you pass tiles, it means that everyone else can kind of be working and looking at their board at the same time, which means complete silence across the board, around the table. It's fun to play a competitive game where you really can't affect someone's board too much, instead really focusing on prioritizing your own. Although I will say, animal habitats quickly become highly sought after. And in my experience, they are the easiest way to score points in this game. Using the score pad, have each player tally how many points they received for each different type of garden feature. I described how each of these features score points in the game component section, so if you need a refresher, check that section out. On to the practice round. So the box itself is organized fairly well. I've personally added a large bag to hold all of the pieces. Here are the little rule sheets. There are 5, 1 for every player. The scoreboard, the starting player token, and your boards, which fold up nice and neat and have a nice indent. The design of this game is truly incredible. Starting player starts with their little token, and since there are 2 players, you grab 3 of the little pieces. You have them in your hand, flip over the top one. Okay, so this one has a garden with no water, 2 solar panels, and a path. 2 solar panels is actually pretty valuable. So I'm thinking of putting that in the sun column. In the path and the garden, if I can position this in a way where the path and the garden would both have a chance of being finished, I think that would be ideal. But since it has no wind, it also has to be not super high up on the wind side. So maybe a position like this, where the path can go whatever way, but I also have a chance of closing off this garden in this direction if I find a piece with water. So if I choose that piece, then the other 2 pass over to player number 2. Player number 2 will now look at the top one. Ooh. Now, this is also a good starting piece, and it has a windmill and solar panels. I would maybe put this somewhere like here. Well, 2 solar panels. Maybe here? Yeah, I'll say that works. And no one had to flip over the last card, so that gets discarded. Over to the side. All right, now the starting player moves here, and this player takes their 3. Okay, looking at the top token, that's another path, and it doesn't have a ton of what I'm looking for. I think right now I would look for a curving path. So I'm going to pass this over to the other player and look at the next piece. Oh, an end to the path. Ooh, and a garden with water. I'm thinking maybe if I put the ending path here, I would have a chance at closing off the garden because I'm also already closed on 2 sides. I think that's a good move. And then this third one gets held if this person doesn't, if the second player doesn't take this piece. So they'll look at the first piece. That actually aligns pretty nicely with adding another solar panel to this section. But I think that I would want to put it here to give myself a better chance at getting these 3 wind in this section. So I would put it there, and I wouldn't use the last one. That would once again get discarded. And that is 2 rounds of solar gardens. You would obviously continue playing until your entire board is full, but just for an example, that's how a round generally runs. That's all for this week. Thanks for watching, and we will sip you later.